Hello everyone. So we had a new trailer for Tekken 8 yesterday, and since then I've seen a bunch of social media posts and videos with people saying things like why I'm concerned for Tekken 8 or the future of Tekken. And I assume that the reason we saw that is because whenever we have information about a new game in an ongoing franchise, people like to cash in by making content like that. It's very successfully clickbaity in a disaster porn kind of a way. You know, these are all the ways that this could go wrong based on the information that we have. But they kept showing up. I watched the trailer a couple more times. I thought back to Tekken 7, did some testing in the game, and I sort of wanted to answer for myself, should we be concerned with where this is going? And I think that maybe we should. This is not blind speculation, and I think at least us veteran players might be very unhappy with the direction that the franchise seems to be taking. And I'm going to explain why I think that. Like I said, there's a lot of sort of evidence to indicate that this is happening. And I think the biggest one might be an interview that Harada did with IGN yesterday, where he explained or went through the trailer with an interviewer. And these are his own words from that trailer. He wants to change Tekken at its core to be an aggressive game, because attacking and being aggressive in a fighting game is more fun than defense. That is something that the people who are in charge of this entire franchise definitely believe, and we know that based on that they said it themselves, but we also see it very clearly when we look back at how the franchise has changed with the last two entries and during the development cycle of Tekken 7, right? Now, I think that most people who enjoy playing Tekken at a reasonably high level, think that one of the most special parts of this game is that it's so very difficult, specifically on defense. And when you learn the really difficult way of defending in this game, you finally overcome offense and you get to play high-level Tekken. I think that's sort of almost the crystallized heart of what has made this franchise special for very long, and that going away because attacking is more fun, doesn't sound great. But, how is that going to manifest in the game? Well, the screenshot that I've chosen here in the back is from the trailer. I think the stage looks amazing. It's very saturated, a lot of color. People have called it, clay fighter or whatever. I think it looks kind of cool. But the thing is, the game can look amazing. It can even have a very, very good story. Let's be honest, it won't. The story will be, the same story we've had in every game going back. But it can have all those things, and it's great if it does, but it's going to come down to whether or not the game is successful and really good in terms of the people who want to play it. Well, I think it's going to come down to four things. It's going to be the balance of the roster, the marketing of the game in terms of things like DLC. Sometimes that's the same thing as balance, which is not a good thing, but it's happened a lot in the past. Network features such as the net code and how the online modes work, and then finally how the game is going to play mechanically, right? And I think we have a reason to be concerned about all of those things, and that is why it's a good idea to not get honey-dicked by good graphics. Unfortunately, we have to be a little bit cynical, we have to be a little bit critical, and as you know, if you watch my channel, that is something that I specialize in. But, okay, so we know that they want to take this aggressive direction with the game, and the screenshot that we have right here is an example of a new mechanic that they refer to as the heat system in this interview. And we saw a couple of examples of it in the trailer, and basically what is happening here in this screenshot is Lars is performing his forward 3. It hits Jack, launches him, and then because of a heat cancel, I guess you could call it, Lars flies forward, basically doesn't have a recovery animation, and shows up with so much advantage that he can easily do a big combo on Jack, right? And we saw examples of the exact same thing happening on block with Jin's Demon Paw. So Jin does a Demon Paw, which is already like one of the best games in Tekken, right? It's a mid-safe gap closing, reasonably well tracking mid with wall splat. It knocks down, it's just fantastic. Elise has a shitty version of it called the Bloody Claw, and it's still like her best move, right? But he does that, and then on block sort of cancels his recovery and teleports in, puts Kazuya in a sort of stunned or block stunned sort of a state, and gets at least a completely free mix-up. So what we have here is a universal system that's going to exist on all characters, where they can attack, cancel any recovery animation, probably go into a combo if they successfully hit, but get a guaranteed mix-up if they get blocked. And we've seen them implement or experiment with something similar in Tekken 7 recently because they introduced this new the new tactic, whatever it's called, the something or other. But you know, some moves got changed to where they now put the opponent in a guaranteed mix-up state, and it only really ever works at the wall. It was a nerf for many moves. It's not a mechanic that, in my opinion, worked well at all or changed much. It only impacted very, very few characters. But think about one of the moves that got turned into a new tactic. For example, Bob, that was a big nerf for him, but the second hit of his up forward 1+2 4. It hits the opponent, it puts them in a state where they can do not much at all. They have to be mixed up, but it also knocks them away from you, nullifying the mix-up situation, right? And that is why the wall becomes very important when you want to implement that. What we're seeing with the heat system is basically that happening, but it's happening on moves that are much better as far as we can tell right now, because, you know, 443 and Demon Paw having those properties is much more powerful. If those were new tactics moves, you know, that would be great, but it also doesn't do the pushback thing. It sort of teleports you and gives you the free mix-up and even a launch. And let's just say that if Jin's Demon Paw was a normal hit launcher, or if it was a plus on block mid, like, you know, close the gap and gave you a free mix-up, I think it would be by far the best move in the entire game right now. So this is something extremely powerful. So how does this make the game lean towards being more aggressive, and how does it de-emphasize defense? I'm gonna read a quote from the interview yesterday. This is something that Harada said and apparently believes. He says, if you're looking at esports, if you're looking at the esports scene where two people are the same kind of level, there might not be a lot of offense going on because it's hard for both players to open up their opponent and not a whole lot happens. So his concern is that if two people are good at the game, they defend too much and not much happens. And he's talking about esports here, and that is so extremely important and something we have to keep in mind when we think about the development of this game going forward, because Harada is head of esports at Namco. He's not the director of the game anymore. They work a lot with esports. They make a lot of their money on the offline esports scene, and so they want this game to be good to or fun to watch for spectators, maybe even more than they want it to be good or fun for people to actually play. Or they do at least really worry about the watchability of Tekken as an esport. Which is something I don't agree with it and think is strange, because if the game is good and the high-level players enjoy it, then I think the enjoyability of watching that game sort of emerges from that. But you know, whatever. Let's keep reading. And you can see this in boxing and other martial arts as well, which I think is completely irrelevant. Fighting games have nothing to do with real-world martial arts. You know, there's fucking anime dude shooting lightning out his asshole and fighting like a robot in Times Square. There's not a lot of attacking going on. We want to make sure the game is entertaining to watch by motivating players to go on the offense and try and open their opponents up. Now, I think what happens when you have a defensive match in high-level Tekken, right, is that people are constantly prying and looking for openings in the opponent. It's not that they're just stalling and turtling, right? You're moving, looking, poking, trying to find patterns, trying to find openings, trying to do a whiff punish, right? And it becomes this really tense thing where it's like, who's going to make the first mistake, and who's going to be successful, who's going to get the hard read, you know, who's picking up on his opponent's movement and like getting the best reads. That is like at the core of what makes Tekken exciting to watch for me, and I think for a lot of people. And if you start attacking more instead of having that, if you have these built-in mechanics for breaking down defense and just getting to the mix-up game, I think that is a lot less exciting to watch. But I also need to say that I am not that fucking concerned with how interesting the game is to watch, because I want to play it, and I'm not that much of a huge fan of offline events and tournaments anymore, because I feel like they are less about the game and more marketing vehicles for the game and for other products that sponsor the events, right? I've made many jokes about Cup Noodle in the past, but for real, Namco make a lot of their money in these events. They get sponsorship money, but they also bring their new DLC and their new features and the new things they want to sell to these events, and that's how they get, you know, a marketing platform for those things. And so Namco are worrying about their money, in my opinion, when they are worrying about the watchability and the esports ability of the game. As somebody who mainly wants to play the game and wants to enjoy playing it at, you know, a reasonable level, it feels like the wrong direction to me, you know. I'm gonna have a bit of coffee right there. So when you have these mechanics, such as the heat system, that help or are supposed to help you break down turtles and get to an offensive game, what does that really do? Well, it's going to completely emphasize the mix-up aspect of Tekken, and it's going to de-emphasize defensive aspects such as movement, right? We know for a fact that this is something that Namco want to do with this game and have wanted to do with this game for a long time, because I think they were traumatized by Tekken Tag 2, and then they've been concerned since then. And again, we've seen them say this, but we've also seen them do things that indicate this. They want the game to be easier to learn, and they want the game to be less complex and focused on mix-ups. Two characters standing like that, one mixes, is successful or unsuccessful, the other character mixes, and back and forth. And one of the best examples of that being true is this quote that I put on the screen right here. Why would you want to sidewalk if you can block and launch, if you know it's coming like all other moves? So this is a tweet that we saw from the current director of the Tekken project after the Mishima Hell Sweep was turned into a move that tracked to both sides, and we had homing Hell Sweeps in the game. And even the Mishima players, because, you know, Mishima boys are these fragile ego bitches who, like, you know, are having a big tea party where they circle jerk because their characters are so hard or whatever. But they are Tekken players, and they do care about and love this game. And they also care specifically about execution, playing well, and the soul of Tekken, right? Mishima boys are like that. And so even them, even though it was a huge buff to them, they were like, no, we don't like this, because I don't want my mix-up to be guaranteed every time. I want it to be successful because I make it successful, which I thought was great. I thought it was so cool that the community said no when this happened. It's one of the few examples ever of Namco actually rolling back a big change like that, and the homing Hell Sweeps were removed after this. But if the director of the Tekken project thinks that why would you want movement, you can just block, you know, if it's a mix-up, I think that's like this huge, like, it sort of opened up our eyes to why some things are happening with the game, and why it feels like they are de-emphasizing these things that are fun and special to us, right? So if you're going to have a mix-up focused game, why is that less special and less fun than Tekken as it is right now? Well, I think it's because when you're focusing on mix-ups, you remove the skill-based nature of the game to a large extent. Because, and I've said this in the past, you can be like a new player who has not played much Tekken before, standing across from the best player in the world, you know, tournament-winning world champion. And if you have put them into a situation where they genuinely need to eat a real mix-up, a 50-50 or whatever, most mix-ups aren't real 50-50s, there's more going on there. But they have to sort of choose between a couple of options. They can't, like, select out somehow and you successfully, you know, pick the right option. They can't react, they can't parry, they can't move out, they have to guess. If you are successful, then you will deal damage even to the best player in the world. And so it's the great equalizer. It's what, you know, changes Tekken into a more level playing field. That might sound very good, but it's also a huge problem when being good at the game, putting in a lot of effort at learning the game, spending years learning the game maybe, becomes less of a rewarding prospect, right? I don't think that's a good direction to head in, because for me and for most people I've talked to, I've tried to, like, teach people about the game on my channel now for years. The thing that people seem to really get drawn into and then get addicted to Tekken is that they have this long process of gradually learning this really difficult thing, and they can look back at their progress and see how much progress they've made, and eventually someday maybe be actually happy with the results. I don't think many people ever get, you know, completely satisfied with how they play the game, but maybe that's why we keep chasing that horizon, right? And we want to keep playing the game, you know, 7-8 years after it's been released, in the case of Tekken 7, right? Whereas if this comes out and two people are just blocking, mixing, and then use this heat system to just break down any defense, I think that makes the game a lot less special. Another thing it does is, of course, it de-emphasizes movement, and we've seen movement be de-emphasized before. A lot of people are concerned when they look at Tekken 8 because so far we haven't seen any character at all sidestep even a single time. We've only ever seen characters move straight forward in this game. Kazuya did a duck back one time, but that's the only time anybody's moved any direction other than forward. Now, we've only seen like seconds of gameplay so far, and there's a lot more to come there. The only small indication we have that 3D movement is even still a thing in this game is that Jin does something that looks like a homing move in the game. And what's really interesting is that he has these new specific colored trails to his homing move, and then Kazuya does another homing move, or something that is currently a homing move at least, and it has one of those trails as well. Now, I theorized when I saw that because Jin seems to attack with two limbs, one going left and one going right. He has a red trail on the one limb and a blue one on the other, and then Kazuya attacks in one direction and has a blue trail on his hand. And I think they might be implementing a color-based trail system after the attack here to inform the players on the screen, this move looks like this and goes to this side. If you want to deal with it or try and move around it, this is probably the direction you should do it in. And it's another attempt to use color to help people and give them information and help them to learn the game. Is that a good idea? I haven't really decided for myself yet, but it's definitely true that people at Namco are worrying about this game being too difficult, and they want it to be easy to learn and more casual. I just want to be clear and say here that I am all for the game being easier to learn. I think good tutorial systems and things that are intuitive about the game are a fantastic choice. A thing like having frame data in the game, right? You hopefully not having to pay for it. It's a fantastic idea. Punishment training, you could expand that into a bigger concept that actually works and use it to teach people things. I mean, people learning the game and having tools for doing that is not a bad thing, but for there to be less to learn is something that worries me a lot. When you're just focusing on mix-ups, you're essentially playing a game of rock, paper, scissors, right? Or, you know, a more complex version of that where it's just a guessing game. Another thing that I think is really dangerous here is that, you know, Harada's talking about the idea that attacking and attacking successfully is more fun than defending in this game. And here's one of the main things that I've fucking tried to communicate in my videos for years now. You can't develop fighting games, I think, with that sort of a mindset, because every single time you do something to one character, you make a character too powerful, you make a move fun to use or good, or you make offense too good, you also do the exact same opposite at the same time by definition, because if one character is attacking a lot all the time, that means that the other character is defending against those attacks all the time. If one move is extremely fun and cool and dramatic and has a long animation and is cool to use or whatever, some opponent is going to be on the receiving end of that move and not enjoy the move as much. And of course, if you have two players in the match, half of them aren't enjoying what's happening. That's, you know, half the player base overall. So I don't think that really works. I mean, maybe both players are supposed to attack more and defend less or whatever. But okay, what mechanisms do you have in place to allow somebody to change what is happening in the match? Can they move out of the way of these moves by using, you know, really good implemented 3D movement? Is the Korean backdash still in there? Can we still escape using that in some situations? Or is it all going to be about the opponent will mix and you will either guess right, guess wrong, and then you will mix? If that happens, this is going to be a boring game that is pointless to play, because I can do it right now. I can go and, you know, meet up with a friend of mine and we can just play, you know, a guessing game, rock, paper, scissors, tic-tac-toe, whatever, you know. Skill being a huge part of the game is a huge part of the game, you know, mind blown. So those are some of my concerns, but I think what we really should keep an eye on going forward is the fact that Namco made a lot of money making Tekken 7, specifically using DLC and offline events as marketing vehicles for selling DLC and other products such as energy drinks. I think that's a huge direction that the entire industry is taking, and I think Namco want to be front and center riding on that wave. I think that's, you know, obvious. I think the fact that Harada was promoted from director of Tekken, the creator of Tekken, to esports manager, that is a higher and more powerful position within the Namco structure, right? It's very telling. I think the people who create the game, for all their artistic talents and all the amazing work they do, they don't necessarily, at least it doesn't seem to me, that they play the game enough or they play the game well enough to understand what makes it really special to veteran players. Now, if you can please the casual player base and sell a bunch of copies of the game when it's new, that's fantastic, good for you. But the longevity that we've had with, you know, previous installments. Is that going to be a thing, right? Are the veteran players going to want to stick around, make content, show up for events? Are they going to love the game, or are they going to, you know, just hate it and feel obligated to play it because it's their jobs? That would be such a sad reality. You know, casual players are happy if you have, you know, fun light show, some cool characters. You know, you can go into customization mode and remove Lily's shoes and her bras and look at her little monegasque titties, right? So I don't think that's something that you should focus too heavily on. And some of those casual players that come in and want to learn the game are going to be like, wow, there's a lot to learn here. It's really fun. And these good players are doing cool shit that I want to learn. How do I start? They look at a video, maybe they go into the practice mode of the game. They start, you know, unraveling that mystery, and then they're hooked. And within a couple of years, they are advanced Tekken players, or they are at least on the path to glory. And that's like the magic of fighting games, right? So yeah, I am a little bit concerned and a little bit worried. We know very little so far. Who knows? This heat system could be something that, you know, we have rage drives that do this in the game right now. Pretty much the exact same thing. Lars, one of his rage drives, does this right now. If it's a one-time thing that you can do with the rage, then it's basically just all the characters in the game getting a better rage drive, which wouldn't be a huge issue overall, right? You know, it would change the game in a big way, but it wouldn't, as a franchise at its core, turn Tekken into a hyper-aggressive game, right? We need more information, but I want to know, is the Korean backdash still in? How is 3D movement going to work? Is it still a huge deal? And this heat system, what exactly is it? How often can you use it? And why do you think that attacking is more fun than defending, when one character attacking means by definition that another character is defending? Let me know what you thought. It's just sort of a rambly video, one image the whole time, because I kind of wanted to go through my own thoughts on this, you know, nice and slow. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Let me know if, you know, I'm wrong and what your concerns are in the comments, and I'll see you guys again very soon.